Really remains that way for most of the day. Some fair weather cloud bubbling up from time to time. Northern areas, a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers, but again, note across parts of Orkney and northern Scotland remain cloudy with some persistent rain really carrying on right throughout the course of the day. But in the sunshine across the south, feeling pleasantly warm, highs reaching 22-23 degrees. Little changes as we move into Sunday night. Fairly quiet across the south, but further rain or showers across the north, again being blown in on a fairly keen wind. And for Orkney and Shetland and the far north of Scotland, that rain just persisting right throughout the night. And that, in fact, it will remain that way as we go into Monday itself. Elsewhere.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Congratulations to Nigel Farage, voted by you as the nation's best news presenter at the prestigious Trick Awards.
I went to a wedding today. It was wonderful. Congratulations to Andy and Laurie, a match made in heaven. It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, meddling monarch King Charles signs up to climate hysteria by switching on an emergency global warming clock. If our new king wants to stay on the throne, he's going to have to stay out of politics. In the big story, we'll bring you the latest on the riots in France. Is Europe's multicultural experiment falling apart? In my Take at 10, Jeremy Clarkson's wild comments last year about Meghan Markle were a little harsh, but the press industry attacking him today are punishing an entertaining writer simply for doing his job. The war on free speech continues. King Charles, Jeremy Clarkson, some great stories, my top pundits, lots to get through. First, the headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
Thank you, Mark. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Extra police have been sent to the French cities of Marseille and Lyon as fears grow of a fifth night of riots after a teenager was shot dead by police in Paris on Tuesday. Buildings and vehicles were again torched and stores looted last night by protesters demanding justice for the 17-year-old known as Nahel M. The French Interior Minister has confirmed police arrested some aged as young as 12 and 13. The French Interior Minister says the state won't back down and that they're prepared for another night of chaos.
The Interior Ministry is mobilising the same number of forces tonight everywhere in the country, meaning 45,000 police officers are mobilised.
3 teenagers have been charged with murder after a 17-year-old boy was found dead in a canal in West London. 17-year-old Victor Lee was found in the water near Willesden Junction last Sunday. He was pulled from the water, but despite efforts to save him, he died at the scene. The 3 boys will appear at Highbury Magistrates Court on Monday. A 46-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder after a 15-year-old boy and a 23-year-old man were stabbed to death in North London on Thursday. The teenager, who's now been named by police as Leonardo Reed, was pronounced dead at the scene in Islington. The 23-year-old man died later in hospital. A third victim was also found at an address in North London with stab wounds. His injuries aren't believed to be life-threatening. 7 Just Stop Oil protesters have been arrested for disrupting London's annual Pride March. Activists blocked the road and sprayed paint on a Coca-Cola truck, forcing the parade to stop for more than 15 minutes. They were arrested for public nuisance offences. The group had warned of potential disruption as it called on organisers not to accept sponsorship money from what they call high-polluting industries. And Twitter has applied a temporary limit to the number of tweets users can read in a day, as thousands are tonight reporting problems accessing the site. Owner Elon Musk has announced via Twitter that unverified accounts are limited to 600 posts a day, while verified accounts can read up to 6,000. He says the temporary limits are to address what he calls extreme levels of data scraping, which involves pulling information from a website into a spreadsheet, as well as system manipulation. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn, this is GB News. Now it's back over to Mark.
My thanks to Rhiannon, who returns in an hour's time. You got to love that. Just Stop Oil disrupting the Pride March. Now even woke people can't stand them. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In My Big Opinion, meddling monarch King Charles signs up to climate hysteria by switching on an emergency global warming clock. If our new king wants to stay on the throne, he's going to have to stay out of politics. In the big story, we'll bring you the latest on the demonstrations and the crisis in France. Riots aplenty. Is Europe's multicultural experiment falling apart? My Mark Meets guest is the secret daughter of music genius Louis Armstrong. She will tell her incredible story, which recently featured in an Emmy award-winning film. She's up before the end of the hour. In my Take at 10, Jeremy Clarkson's wild comments last year about Meghan Markle were a little harsh, but the press industry attacking him today are pushing an entertaining writer simply for doing his job into the naughty step. The war on free speech continues. I'll be making the case for Jeremy Clarkson at 10. As America's top court sensationally votes to end affirmative action, which gives people advantage based on their skin colour, we'll get reaction from tonight's newsmaker, the queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, we will be remembering Diana, who would have turned 62 today. Mark Dolan tonight is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30. With three top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Tonight, Sajila Kershi, Adrian Hayes and Lucy Beresford. Tonight I'll be asking the pundits, is a 4-day week a Skyver's charter? Do older people make better parents? And given that we're famously ugly, is it time for Brits to embrace plastic surgery? Plus your emails, especially the spicy ones, mark@gbnews.com. And this show has a golden rule, especially on a Saturday night. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Lots to get through. Let's kick off with my big opinion. The honeymoon is over, folks. Meddling monarch King Charles has signed up to climate alarmism by joining forces with the most divisive mayor in London's history, Sadiq Khan, to activate a bizarre climate countdown clock, which basically says the planet will have completely melted by next Tuesday. Now, my mind is open when it comes to global warming. I'm all for cutting emissions, and who doesn't want clean air, sustainable energy, and an environment in good shape for future generations. Horrendous plastic waste bothers me in particular, which is why I loathed those worthless face masks that now reside in their billions at the bottom of the world's oceans. Yes, to be honest, I could be quite the green campaigner, and I've even proposed my own solution to rising temperatures, Smart Zero, an alternative to net zero, which places the economy and the will of the people at the heart of our environmental strategy. The current approach, led by a malnourished teenager from Sweden and based around hysteria which has worrying echoes of the COVID overreaction, will see us castrate ourselves financially and bet the house on flaky renewables, which has played out very badly for Germany, who have bankrolled Putin's war machine with their reliance on Russian oil and gas. All whilst countries like the USA, Brazil, India and China burn fossil fuels for fun. So I'm happy for Britain to navigate towards a cleaner path. But our carbon footprint is currently smaller than Cinderella's slipper, and we're responsible for just 1% of global emissions, which isn't bad for the 5th biggest economy in the world. There's more to do, but sensibly and not in isolation. But sadly, that's not the messaging from cranky King Charles, who's been beating the net zero drum for years now, and who promised that he would stay out of this divisive issue once he acceded to the throne. Well, he's been in the job for 10 minutes, and he's already signed up to a political project which may or may not be valid, but which is just that, political. Policies born out of climate hysteria will affect the economy and will affect the livelihood and quality of life of the British people. That makes it political, which is why Charles should keep his rather long and wobbly nose out of it. I thought it was just Prince William who was going to preach the eco message as Prince of Wales on behalf of his father. But it seems old Charlie himself wants a piece of the action too. This political intervention by our new king is a grave error, and one never made by his late great mother Elizabeth, who stayed out of politics for 7 decades. Charles has been king for less than 7 months, and here we go. There is a worthy debate to be had about environmentalism and the planet. The human species is clearly destroying the beautiful world that we inherited, and it's got to stop. But how and why and when should be debated by elected politicians, not crusty aristocrats who are lucky enough to be born inside the right womb. If our new king wants to stay on the throne, he's going to have to stay out of politics. The halo has slipped for King Charles, or should I say the crown. Charles may have started the climate countdown clock, but I've got no time for his antics. Listen, it's very clear that King Charles is a man of principle. He's been very consistent about his environmental message for many years now. The majority of mainstream climate scientists would argue that the temperatures are rising. We've got to act. So most people would support King Charles. But what do you think? Mark at GBnews.com. I'm happy to have the debate around climate change, but not with a privileged aristocrat who was born into the right family. Let me know your thoughts, Mark at GBnews.com. Let's get reaction now from my top pundits tonight. Comedian Sajeela Kershi, adventurer and leadership coach Adrian Hayes, and broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Sajeela, welcome back to the show.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Has King Charles crossed a line?
So here's the thing, right? Why... I'm confused about this. So, yes, the Queen did keep out of things, of politics, and that was fine because she was young when she came to the throne and she probably didn't have, like, loads of opinions on lots of things because she was still learning, so she had to learn on the job. He's 70-something. He's too long in the tooth. He's always had an opinion and he's not going to shut up. You know what I mean? He's always going to be giving...
But he said he would, Sajeela. He promised.
Yeah, but, you know, people...
He said, I'm not stupid.
Hello, we're living in the UK where everyone's been lying.
But wasn't the genius of the Queen that we didn't know what she thought? And yes, she started as a young monarch, but she was well into her 90s when she passed away. We know that she was knowledgeable. We know she had a view on Europe and on lots of issues, but we just didn't hear them.
No, but she did kind of, like, sneakily let us know her views. He's just a bit more vocal. And maybe that's the thing. It's like maybe our monarchs are going to change. We can't have the Queen. The Queen is a once-in-a-lifetime person. No, he's a very different person himself.
Okay, we're all once-in-a-lifetime people, actually.
Well, aren't we? Lucy Beresford, the point is that I do want on this programme to debate net zero, and I actually think we can get those emissions down, but do it with the economy as the focus and also with the support of the British people. Take the people with you. At the moment, it feels a little bit like sort of a mirror image of the COVID measures, where it's an emergency and we've just got to put up with this. Your reaction to King Charles's intervention?
I love it. I actually wish we could use him more. I think he's got phenomenal soft power. If he'd been allowed...
He's soft in the head,
No, he's not soft in the head. This is what he's been talking about for the last 50 years. He's been talking to plants and making his place at Highgrove, you know, incredibly sustainable. As soon as he came to the throne, we had COP27 and the government banned him from going. And I thought that was such an error. It could have been such an amazing convening presence to pull people together, because the problem is we are actually in the vanguard of quite a lot of this eco-change. There are so many other countries like India and China who are really dragging their feet. We're ahead of the game. We could actually bring more people with us, particularly if we used people like King Charles. And if you've already got Prince William, who is coming out there and talking about mental health, talking about homelessness, this is the direction of monarchy, and this is what we've got to get used to.
A political monarchy.
A monarchy that can be used for a force for good to really get people talking about the issues that really matter.
A force for good, right? This is the race to net zero, which is going to mean you've got to get rid of your car and buy an electric one. You need a mortgage for that. You've got a heat pump boiler that doesn't work and costs a fortune. This is very political, Adrian Hayes.
It is, and I'm someone who has spoken, written, campaigned for climate change in the past, courtesy of my polar expeditions when I saw the melting ice far worse than it ever was before. But I've turned my back, turned my tune in the last few years because the cause has been hijacked by a variety of vested interests, from those who want to control us, those who want us to go back live in caves, and those who want to make money. And I'm a passionate environmentalist. I said in the show before, we need a new group, environmentalists against net zero, because this thing is about following the money. And I'm afraid to King Charles, it is political. When you are spending, because let's take sewage in Britain's rivers, very topical issue now. Nobody's pushing that because it costs money. But net zero is making money, making billions from renewables. And when you're spending £12 billion a year on net zero subsidies and net zero, that is entirely political. So I do really respect, and I think people like Patrick Moore, the founder of Greenpeace, David Bellamy, people who are passionate environmentalists like me, who are saying this net zero nonsense based on absolutely unknown, flawed modellings. We need to get back to solving environmental issues today. Nice one to start off with. I get passionate about this.
You're saying Bellamy, like, talking about plants, is better than Prince or
I'm saying we need
talking to plants.
We need to be looking at water, sewage, plastic pollution, air pollution that's not carbon dioxide, deforestation,
doesn't really matter what we do. If we've got other countries like China and India who are doing absolutely nothing about it, who are in fact turning to us and saying, well, it's all very well for you in the way that you have progressed economically, we would like to have some of the same, thank you very much. And we'll be able to say, yeah, but if we could actually persuade them by getting... what do they really love? They love meeting royalty. They want to hear what people like him has to say, because in a way he doesn't necessarily have a political agenda.
On the climate clock in China? Why doesn't he head to Beijing and lecture the Chinese?
Why didn't the government allow him to go to COP27?
Mark, I just think the climate clock
family
is
show,
nonsense.
family show, Adrian. We've all had a drink.
The climate.
You just called it a climate cock.
Yeah. I mean, that is hysterical.
5 minutes in.
We tower for that. Actually, and Lucy's a psychotherapist. We know it's the alarmism with child anxiety. I had a friend of mine text me tonight, knew I was on the show, said she was at a conference and all these kids were sort of worried sick to death about climate change. This is nonsense. What we're talking. Climate change and global warming is a real issue. We have to solve it. I'm not a climate change denier, but we've got decades to do it, and we need to turn our facts to the
we have two problems.
And don't do it, Lucy, by wrecking the economy, which is what we did with COVID.
And also, you know, if the polling suggests that if you ask people, do you agree with cleaner air, do you agree with cleaner rivers, everyone says yes. But if they don't understand economically how that's going to come about, and the net zero goals that we've got are going to be ruinously expensive
can I just say,
in a time of cost of living crisis.
Sajila, is that all of this is a punt. It's a massive gamble. Those renewables are an experiment at best, right? The Germans have been investing in renewables for a decade. They got rid of nuclear in 2011 under the worst German Chancellor since the Second World War, Angela Merkel. And they've been reliant on Russian oil and gas for the last few years, powering Putin's killing machine. So we have to accept that this net zero project is a massive experiment and the British people should have a say.
It is a massive... I kind of agree with what Lucy was saying, that, yes, everyone you ask wants a better... You know, they want it, right? But not everyone can afford to go down that route. And I think with the cost of living, I think there's all the... People are more anxious about other things. I think it is an experiment in terms of we don't know what the outcome is. But that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't do it just because, you know, we have to take risk to try for the better good. I just think there should be a choice and a little bit more... It's about how much money are we spending on this? How's it affecting...
Last word, Adrian?
Yeah, nothing wrong with net zero, but in a time and a pace that we can manage them.
This is what I'm talking about, folks, because on Mark Dolan tonight we have patented a brand new idea, and it's not net zero, it's called Smart Zero, which puts the economy and the will of the British people at the heart of any environmental project. What do you think? Your reaction, please, Mark, at gbnews.com at 10 o'clock. I'll be making the case for Jeremy Clarkson. He's been attacked by some rather tedious people in Fleet Street for his Meghan Markle article. They said it was sexist. My response at 10, you won't want to miss it. But next up in the big story, we'll bring you the latest on the riots in France. Is Europe's multicultural experiment falling apart? Plus, we will reveal the results of our Twitter poll. Should King Charles be launching climate clocks, or is he out of time? See you in 2.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. I'm going to get to your emails in just a moment. But earlier on Twitter, in an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll, we asked the following question. As King Charles activates a climate countdown clock, should he stay out of politics? Well, the results are in. 89% of you say yes, the King should stay out of politics. And about 11 and a bit % say no. So a landslide there in support of King Charles being apolitical. Have I got time for a quick email? Let's have a look at them. They're coming in thick and fast. Mark at gbnews.com. How about this from Jan? Hi, Mark. There's no evidence to show that CO2 causes climate change. The climate changes all the time, and it's conflated with environmental damage, which is caused by humans. Pollution should be dealt with. The climate can look after itself. Richard says, Mark, poor nations use fossil fuels to improve the lives of their people and grow their economies. Preaching to them is basically telling them to stay poor. How dare you? Thank you for that. Keep those emails coming. Mark at gbnews.com. Now, let's head to the big story. And sadly, there's really only one big story in town, and that's the ongoing civil unrest in France. Let me bring you up to speed on what is currently happening. Extra police have been sent to the cities of Marseille and Lyon as fears grow of a fifth night of riots following the police shooting of a teenager. The funeral of the 17-year-old boy was held in the Paris suburb of Nanterre earlier today. There were reports of large crowds at the funeral, but the family asked the media to stay away. French President Emmanuel Macron, Elton John's biggest fan, has cancelled his scheduled visit to Germany as a result of the unrest. Didn't stop him going and listening to I'm Still Standing. Overnight, 1,300 people were arrested across France. It's a tragic story, and we've got to ask, are there lessons that can be learnt here in the UK? Is Europe's multicultural experiment falling apart? Let's get the views now of businessman and political commentator Alpesh Patel. Alpesh, it's a tragic set of scenes that we're seeing in France. Should we be worried here in the UK?
Well, I've not been called an experiment before when you talk about multiculturalism. I hope I'm not an experiment. I'm a Yorkshireman, so that makes me as proud British as you can possibly get. Should we be worried? We've had riots here before, if you remember, about 10, 12 years ago, and these are riots. These are not protests. Protests don't result in cities being burnt. And we stand with the French people and the French nation. Let's not forget they share our values. And when we've had difficulties, they've been with us. And similarly, when they've had difficulties like this, I think we should stand with the French nation on this. But these are rioters. And it also looks like what the police officer did, without prejudging it, looks like an act of criminality as well. But I think you'll agree with me that does not justify mass rioting on this case. The question is, are the people deprived or deprived? They're either depraved or they're deprived, whether you're on the right or the left. Now, if you're on the left, I've been reading the articles from Al Jazeera, New York Times, Washington Post. The left will tell you these people are deprived, it's racism, it's institutionalized, and that's why they've had to undertake these protests. By the way, protests which have gone on globally in French colonies as well, surprisingly. Seems a bit tenuous. And the right will tell you they're depraved.
Yeah. Indeed. Of course, there's never a justification for that kind of lawlessness. But does it shine a mirror on the UK and suggest that our society, Alpesh, is better integrated than that of France?
You're speaking to a British Indian Hindu. I mean, I can hardly complain, can I, given that I share a lot of characteristics with the Prime Minister of the country. I mean, I'm going to be flying the British flag
Wish you were in charge.
All day long. Of course, there'll be people pointing out saying, hang on, what about racism on this and religious bigotry on this? Of course, all countries have difficulties, but you're hardly going to hear a complaint from it. It's going to be pretty difficult for a British Indian Hindu to have a complaint about Britain. Okay, I mean, come on, I'm going to sound stupid saying it, aren't I? But yes, we know when it comes to the police, institutionalized racism, the report, Stephen Lawrence, that just came out this week. But the good thing with Britain is we're trying to improve, and there's a hell of a lot of people with their eyes looking at these things, whether it's in Parliament, whether you agree with them or not, and their views on the police. There's a lot of people looking at that, or there's people looking at racism in institutions such as the Cricket Board and so on. Whether you agree or disagree, you know, with the media and the things you guys are doing and your colleagues are doing, whether it's on the left or the right, at least there's a group pushing it, and you know you're being watched, and you better be on your best behavior. You're not going to get away with much. But certainly it looks, I don't want to say, we look at the French and we say, well, thank God we haven't got that going on, because next week, who knows? But I feel for the French because, like I say, they're our allies and they're our friends.
Indeed. I mean, what do you think we might be doing right that the French are getting wrong? Because I've spent time in France, and what I've noticed is that minority communities seem to just be in pockets around the big cities, not integrated in the way they are here in the UK.
I think that's one major issue. I grew up in Leeds, and it's right next door to Bradford, and wherever you get, when you get groups, ethnic minorities, which are, as you say, not integrated, then that just leads to more and more problems. I'm not a social scientist, but observing that, growing up, living in this country, whereas I found with, certainly I can speak of my community, the Indian community and the Hindu community in particular, I've seen us spread our wings in all areas. I used to live in St John's Wood. It doesn't get more white than that, and Kensington before that. And I think that helps. Of course it helps. Now, that's not necessarily the fault of the community itself. Some will say it is, some will say it's not. But that certainly does help. Language helps. Adopting, I mean, look, suit and tie, but I can wear my Indian clothes and wear my Indian food. I think I feel no inconsistency between being British and being Indian. And I think as long as you put country first, above all else, including religion, including every other factor, it's a hell of a lot easier to integrate, a hell of a lot easier. And I think that's a significant part of just getting ahead and adding to the values of your country. By the way, which also leads me to say, I'm all in favour of the king, and I take objection to you having a go at our monarch. I'm feeling a bit more British than you are, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, listen, this show's all about opinions, let me tell you. And we must get you back in the studio, by the way, Alpesh. Great to have you back on the show. Alpesh Patel, businessman and political commentator, who definitely points out that Britain appears to be more successful when it comes to integration than the likes of France. We're going to keep a very close eye on that story. It's obviously very sad for all French people that are going through a very troubling time at the moment, and a big headache for Emmanuel Macron, who'd rather go and see Elton John. Next on the big story on Mark Dolan tonight, this programme is backing a campaign to save Britain's pubs, with fears that as many as a third could close down next year. Let's speak to former landlord of The Plough in Essex and pubs campaigner Simon Clearly. Hey, Simon.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Very well, but I'm really worried about our boozers closing down. Tell me about the place that you used to run, the Plough in Essex.
Well, the Plough, we left at the end of April. At the moment, Green King have got a temporary management team in there, so it is carrying on trading. But alas, as of yet, they haven't found any full-time tenants to take it over. So its future is very much in doubt. I can tell you that the nearest pub to it, the Ickleton Lion in Ickleton, is closing on Monday. Again, they're looking for new people to go in there. And as more and more tenants are leaving pubs, particularly running out of money, finding they can't make a profit, all the big breweries, which we know who they are, I don't need to name them all, are really struggling to find new people to go in and take over these properties. So I think it really is looking quite desperate for some of these properties. Of course, Mark, there are pubs that are in the middle of town centres. If you've got a big pub in the middle of Cambridge, in the middle of Oxford, in the middle of a big town centre, they're going to survive. I think the real problems are going to be the ones in the city, which have lost their trade because now everybody works from home. And those that are in small rural areas, they are the ones that are most at risk.
And why should we worry about the loss of pubs? Why are they important to the British people, to my viewers and listeners?
Well, as you know, Mark, I've been talking about this and particularly the rise in energy costs for over a year. And I was on Nigel's show several times, as you are aware. And after all these instances, I was contacted by press from around the world. I've done interviews for the Sydney Times, the LA Times, the Wall Street Journal, Der Spiegel, Le Monde, all around the world. Pubs are quintessentially English things. We have pubs in England, we have pubs in Ireland. They're not quite the same. They are a part of the fabric of our society. They are the fabric of small communities, certainly. They are where people meet. People have first dates in pubs. People sadly say goodbye after bereavements in pubs. They are where families come together. They are where communities come together. They are where single people come together, particularly the older members of our community, those whose unfortunate partners have passed on. They will go to various functions in pubs. They are a central hub of a lot of communities in the UK, and it is with regret that because of trading circumstances, increased costs, the cost of energy, and the fact that people's drinking habits have also changed a lot over the years, a lot of these are going to be at risk. And I'm not sure if it's going to be a third that we'll lose next year, but we are certainly going to lose hundreds, if not thousands.
Simon, a very sobering assessment. Great to have you on the show. Simon Cleary is a former pub landlord at the Plough in Essex and a pubs campaigner. It's terribly important. It means a lot to me. My family were in the pub business. My dad ran a pub for over 4 decades in Camden. It's an amazing profession. It's very hard work. And our landlords are struggling at the moment. How can we help? Well, when you've got time on your hands, if you can spare the cash, pop into your local and have a pint. Lots more to come on Mark Dolan tonight. At 10 o'clock, in just half an hour's time, I'll be making the case for Jeremy Clarkson. He's been attacked because of his Sun column criticising Meghan Markle. Let me tell you, the woke censorship is too much. The war on free speech sees no end. But next up with my pundits, is a 4-day week a Skyvers charter? Do older people make better parents? And given the fact that we're famously ugly, is it time for Brits to embrace plastic surgery? See you in 2.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Well, the emails are coming in thick and fast. Should King Charles stay out of politics? Patricia says if the King wants to dabble in politics, he should abdicate and run for election. On climate change, Nicola says, hi, Mark, I agree with everything your pundit Adrian said about the net zero agenda. It's all about money and vested interests who don't give a fig that it will make ordinary people colder, poorer and hungrier. Ian says, Mark, the monarchy has to stay out of politics. That's what Black Rod is about. If the King has any concerns, he has private meetings with the Prime Minister and the Privy Council. He shouldn't be putting his name to the Windsor Agreement or the climate clock. Keep those emails coming. Mark at gbnews.com, reacting to the big stories of the day. My top pundits tonight. Comedian Sajila Kershi. Let's get a close-up, because let me tell you, she is the most ravishing woman you will ever see. Known each other a long time. Talented comedian, wise lady. We also have adventurer, leadership coach and broadcaster Adrian Hayes. And a warm welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight, to broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Now, a local council has been blocked from extending trials for a 4-day working week. South Cambridgeshire District Council's Lib Dem leader was commanded by her local government minister to stop the experiment immediately after concerns over its monetary value for local taxpayers. The council is the first in the UK to undertake a trial of this nature, so it begs the question, is a 4-day week a skiver's charter? Adrian.
Mixed feelings on it. By the way, I'm burning up after that climate change talk.
It's real.
Sachila's going to be the fan, and I've got a blue thing on my neck.
You are currently sweating at the moment. You are an advert for net zero, let me tell you.
Yeah, there's a medical reason, but there you go. Right, let's get back on topic. I'm all distracted.
Are you identifying as a woman going through a certain stage in her life?
As a desert rat or something like that. But anyway. 4-day week, yes, what do I think? Look, mixed feelings to this. Most studies I read, look, I'm in the coaching development business myself, and it seems to work in the private sector. But what the key thing is that people work Monday to Thursday, they work their butts off, and they work all the hours under the sun, particularly if they've got long commutes, so they can get off Friday and then have a great long weekend. I just don't think, I'm not convinced it works in the civil service or public authorities.
Maybe. What do you think, of course, the top psychotherapist, Lucy, you know about how the human brain works. Do we need to do 5 days?
No. We don't need to do 5 days. We proved that in a way during the pandemic, during lockdowns, when people were working from home and becoming more productive. And what's been happening is that actually a lot of these, the council in particular, has used some of the money that they've saved to hire more people. So you've got more people doing 4-day weeks. So the criticism that actually the people in the district haven't been served by their council, their civil servants, is a misnomer, because actually you've had more people doing 4-day weeks and therefore getting more work done.
If local councillors are doing a 4-day week, does that mean our council tax will come down by 20%?
Well, no, because I'm assuming they've actually got more people working on it.
Yeah.
So they, instead of having 100 people working in the office, and I've got 120, so they do still have to employ them.
Because that's the issue. A lot of our viewers and listeners will be concerned, are they getting value for money if public sector workers are putting in a 4-hour week?
Yeah, but the 4-hour week. Oh my God, we would all like a 4-hour week.
4-day week. Whoopsie daisy.
Yeah, the 40. It's still 40 hours, and as you say, you've employed more people. I'll tell you where it's going to be a problem is when it becomes a legality. Like, so if there's part-time workers who were already working 3 or 4 days, but they were getting paid less, and then you've got like those who've condensed their hours, 40 hours, into 4 days, and then saying that they've been treated less favourably. So they have a legal case on that aspect by saying, look, we're not being treated the same as the others. But in principle, I think a 4-day week is great. I think we should, and as you say, studies have been done. I've been reading about them.
But what about the skivers?
You're always going to get skivers. It doesn't matter what.
Won't shine ne'er-do-well, so you're going to do even less days now.
Yeah, but exactly. And if your productivity drops, then there will be sanctions. People will let you go. But the idea that just because you work 4 days, everybody's going to be producing less or having a shorter output isn't actually true. What people are finding is that they're more productive because their work-life balance improves. So when they're working for those 4 days, they're more refreshed because they've had 3 days off. Their brain is kind of stimulated in different ways. They can attack their work in a really more dynamic fashion, and people feel that they get better from their employees.
Okay. I like the sanctions bit. I think the public should be able to vote on sanctions like Chinese burns, a smack on the knee for being naughty.
I'd recommend Chinese water torture for some people working in my local authority. Now, a new study has found that men with a high IQ tend to have children later in life in comparison to their counterparts. Among the wealthiest tech entrepreneurs, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk all had children after their 30th birthday. So it begs the question, do older people make better parents? Lucy?
30 is the new old now. This is
no.
Well, as the daughter of much older parents, I have to say that I don't think that's true. I think there are too many other things that the child has to deal with in terms of, the peer pressure and everyone saying, oh, your parents look like grandparents and things like that. And also, just because you're slightly older, again, I question as to whether 30 is that age, that doesn't necessarily mean that your IQ is any higher than anybody else's. But I do think people say you're more relaxed, you have, you have more tolerance, perhaps you've achieved more things in your life and therefore you're less resentful of the things that you're having to give up while you're parenting. But it's interesting that it only talks about fathers. It doesn't say, because obviously the fathers are not the one who actually give birth and go through pregnancy. So why should it matter what their IQ is?
You raise a great question. Of course, Naomi Campbell, congratulations to her. She's become a mother in her early 50s. Do you think she'll do a good job? Is 52, 53 too old to have a child?
I must admit, I hadn't... Did she actually give birth to the baby herself?
I don't know the details on that.
Surrogate.
Sadly, I wasn't in the ward at the time. I've been frantically Googling images to find something.
Presumably she's watching, so Naomi, if you could let us know if that was...
But whether she had the baby or not, do you think that 52, 53 is an appropriate age for a woman to have a small child?
Well, they do say that you are going to be more relaxed. You're going to be less neurotic as a parent because you've possibly got either more life experience or you're less affected by the comparisons with all the other mums around you. Whether you'll have the right amount of energy, I don't know.
No.
And also, but there is that compensation that you've achieved so much in life. So again, this idea that motherhood and fatherhood is not disturbing your career path or it's not disturbing the side of your life that you wanted to pursue.
Adrian.
Jumping to get in here, because as someone who had my kids when I was quite old...
over 30.
Yeah, well over 30, I think. But look, let's all be honest. Look, what makes a good parent is the values you install, the guidance, the wisdom, the discipline, the boundaries, all these things. It doesn't matter what age you are. All I can sort of suggest with Elon Musk's quote is that perhaps those who... by the way, I'm far from intelligent, so I'm a bad example to start with. But those who put off having children, it's a causation versus association. Perhaps they've got more striving to achieve things in life, which perhaps association makes them more driven, perhaps a little bit more on the intelligence side, but very, very loose association.
OK, brilliant stuff. Now, given the fact that we are notoriously ugly, should Brits embrace plastic surgery? That's the big question. We'll be discussing that after 10:30 with the papers. But next up, my Mark Meets guest is the secret daughter of music genius Louis Armstrong. She tells her incredible story next. Plus, we'll give you our verdict on whether a 4-day week is a Skyvers charter. That's a Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll, the results of which are next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan Tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, on the 4-day week, is it a Skyvers charter? Glenda says, Dear Mark, since lockdown, trying to get hold of anyone on the phone has been more difficult. I waited 4 hours for Barclays Bank to answer the phone and they never did. Interesting stuff, Glenda. Thank you for that. Well, earlier on Twitter, we asked you, is a 4-day week a Skyvers charter? The results are in and here we go. The people have spoken. And 64.9% say yes, it's a Skyvers charter. A minority of 35.1% say no. Thank you for voting in that. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for Mark Meets. And in June 1955, Louis Armstrong, nicknamed Satchmo, short for Satchel Mouth, was one of the most popular entertainers in the world. His prowess as a trumpeter and singer completely transformed his career and saw him transcend race barriers in the US and abroad. What the world did not know was that Armstrong had just become a father, nor would it for more than half a century. The daughter born to his mistress was a closely guarded secret. Despite his 4 marriages, several long-term lovers and countless one-night stands, biographies routinely stated that Armstrong had no children. There were even rumours he was sterile. Well, an Emmy-nominated documentary film, Little Satchmo, reveals that he had a daughter, and her name is Sharon Preston Falter. And she joins me right now. Sharon, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Congratulations on the new documentary, which is based on your best-selling book of the same name. I know he wasn't always there, but what are your memories of Louis Armstrong growing up?
Well, my memories were one of lots of fun, especially when I was very young, because we used to travel and be with him on the road. So I actually got to see him perform live many, many times and enjoy his show. And my mom and I were as big as fans as anybody else, but we had a front row seat, or many times we were in the back in the dressing room or on, in the stage. But it was his music that I remember most. So I would say traveling with him when I was younger, those special visits when he came, not often enough, to our home, those were special. And then receiving his letters, where his style of writing was as if he were there having a conversation with you. So it really kept us in touch, and I just enjoyed receiving them.
And those letters were very loving, very affectionate. He wanted you to know how important you were to him. Why was your existence such a well-kept secret, Sharon?
Well, many reasons. Number one, he was married to someone, not my mother. It was the 50s and a time where a celebrity like himself, African American at his stature, having a child out of wedlock was not accepted. It really would have damaged his career. And possibly if he could have gotten that divorce, or if he got divorced, because, sometimes I'm not sure if that was something he really wanted to do or said, even though he did say it and he professed it to my mother. But without that divorce, having the child was just something that really would not work for him in our society. And for my mother, she was a widow. And in those days, being a single mother was not looked upon very favorably. But she was a widow. So it always was, well, she's a widow. And the assumption was that she and her husband had the child. So she was able to live a respectable life, raising me in Harlem and then Mount Vernon.
Well, Sharon, I'm humbled to be talking to his daughter, a true icon, up there with Elvis, up there with the Beatles, up there with Michael Jackson. Louis Armstrong was clearly highly talented, but what do you put his extraordinary success down to? It has to be more than that.
It was his sheer determination. And the fact that, when he sang that song, What a Wonderful World, he truly believed that. He grew up in the harshest of circumstances as a child, but even as a young child, he always looked to the brighter side. So as a young kid, he was working at the age of 8. He brought money home to his mother. He took care of his mother. He always respected her and the family. And he was just thankful for what he had. And the horn, the fact that he enjoyed it so, he just poured himself into it. So he had the sheer determination along with the talent to make it work. And then all along the way, I would say the right people came into his life to nurture that talent.
Indeed, and it's a fascinating story, quite the career, and you know, you were on tour with him, you saw at first hand the impact he had on audiences, a very talented guy as well. He didn't really have a father figure himself, which would explain a lot. Was your dad a tortured soul? Was he a troubled man in any way?
I'm sure, you know, with the life that he had, being a performer, being African American with the restrictions. I mean, this is a man that grew up, you know, not long after slavery and lived in the Jim Crow South. So, you know, he had all of that against him. But he was someone that, you know, no matter what, he saw where he had opportunity and he had interest. He was the fact that he would take a typewriter with him wherever he went, and there were hundreds of people that he would communicate with and write to, and just write about what was going on in his life, and then write to them about what was happening in their lives, which I found extraordinary. I look at that, and I look at what we do now with social media, along with him always having a tape recorder and turning on the tape recorder and just recording conversations. He just had this sense of the moment. And he really lived in that moment and was just thankful
Sharon,
for
you
the
have
admiration, fans, everything.
Sharon, I have to interrupt you. The clock's against us, but you've spoken so well and you've done him proud. Sharon Preston-Falter, thank you so much. The film is out now, and I'll be dealing with Jeremy Clarkson next.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In My Take at 10, Jeremy Clarkson's wild comments last year about Meghan Markle were a little harsh, but the press industry attacking him today are punishing an entertaining writer simply for doing his job. The war on free speech continues. I'll be making the case for Clarkson. Also, we will be remembering Princess Diana, who would have turned 62 today. That's in the company of our newsmaker, Kinsey Schofield, the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting. And Mark Dolan Tonight is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from exactly 10:30 sharp. So, a very busy hour to come. Jeremy Clarkson, he has been attacked by the press industry, the press watchdog. They didn't get the joke. This guy is an entertainer, but there's no laughter in this woke world. Jeremy Clarkson is next in My Take at 10. But first, the headlines. A warm welcome back to Rhiannon Jones, who's mainly happy to be here so she hasn't got to put her kids to bed. Rhiannon, over to you.
Yes, but Mark, it's long past my bedtime. Here are your top stories from the GB newsroom. Tension is rising between police and protesters in the French city of Marseille, with officers throwing tear gas. Extra police have been sent to the southern city and to Lyon as fears grow of a fifth night of riots after a teenager was shot dead by police in Paris on Tuesday. Stores are again being looted, with many being set alight. Protesters are demanding justice for the 17-year-old known as Nahel M. The French Interior Minister says the state won't back down and that they're prepared for another night of chaos.
The Interior Ministry is mobilising the same number of forces tonight everywhere in the country, meaning 45,000 police officers are mobilised.
3 teenagers have been charged with murder after a 17-year-old boy was found dead in a canal in West London. 17-year-old Victor Lee was found in the water near Willesden Junction last Sunday. He was pulled from the water, but despite efforts to save him, he died at the scene. The 3 boys will appear at Highbury Magistrates Court on Monday. And a 46-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder after a 15-year-old boy and a 23-year-old man was stabbed to death in North London on Thursday. The teenager, who's now been named by police as Leonardo Reed, was pronounced dead at the scene in Islington. The 23-year-old man died later in hospital. A third victim was also found at an address in North London with stab wounds. His injuries are not life-threatening. 7 Just Stop Oil protesters have been arrested for disrupting London's annual Pride March. Activists blocked the road and sprayed paint on a Coca-Cola truck, forcing the parade to stop for more than 15 minutes. They were arrested for public nuisance offences. The group had warned of potential disruption as it called on organisers not to accept sponsorship money from what they call high-polluting industries. And Twitter has applied a temporary limit to the number of tweets users can read in a day, as thousands are tonight reporting problems accessing the site. Its owner, Elon Musk, has announced via Twitter that unverified accounts are limited to 600 posts a day, while verified accounts can read up to 6,000. He says the temporary limits are to address what he calls extreme levels of data scraping, which involves pulling information from a website into a spreadsheet, as well as system manipulation. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn, this is GB News. Now it's back over to the wonderful Mark.
Thanks, Rhiannon. We'll see you in an hour. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Coming up this hour, we'll be heading stateside to hear from the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. We'll be remembering Princess Diana, who would have turned 62 today, and we'll get reaction from Kinsey to America's top court sensationally voting to end affirmative action, which gives people advantage based on their skin colour, a story and an issue which is dividing America. Mark Dolan tonight is the home of the papers, with tomorrow's front pages from 10:30 sharp. Plus, we'll have tonight's headline heroes and back page zeros, all nominated by my brilliant collection of pundits tonight. So, big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. We'll start with my take at 10. A bunch of Fleet Street killjoys called the Independent Press Standards Authority have ruled that the petrolhead presenter Jeremy Clarkson's cheeky column in The Sun about Meghan Markle last year breached the editor's code of practice. Apparently, it was sexist. I don't know about that. What I can tell you is the article was bloody hilarious. It was meant to be tongue-in-cheek, something lost on these snowflake censors. In what was clearly a satirical piece, and in his provocative and explosive house style, the article was headlined, "A Woman Talking Bollocks," which I think you'll agree is the perfect start. About Meghan, he wrote, "I hate her. Not like I hate Nicola Sturgeon or Rose West. I hate her on a cellular level." So there you go. He just said she's worse than the mass murderer Rose West. For anyone with half a brain cell, that's the point at which you quickly realise he's joking. It's humour. He's not really saying that the mass murderer Rose West, who helped her husband Fred bury dead bodies in the back garden, is preferable to Meghan Markle. That said, Rose West did have quite sweet granny glasses, didn't she? And I'm not sure she moaned as much as Meghan. Anyway, Clarkson continues, "At night, I'm unable to sleep as I lie there grinding my teeth and dreaming of the day when she's made to parade naked through the streets of every town in Britain while the crowds chant shame and throw lumps of excrement at her." Oof, that's even a bit rough for me. But what this woke army of censors didn't notice, or perhaps deliberately ignored, was that the image of Meghan Markle receiving a public flogging, walking naked through the town, was a reference to a scene of that exact nature in the television series Game of Thrones. So this was not literal, but a flight of fancy, a creative frisson, something for which Clarkson is paid a huge amount of money by The Sun at The Sun. And indeed out there, their highly talented and female editor, Victoria Newton, who commissioned the article. Clarkson's gobby, yes he is, but he's also got the gift of the gab. Clarkson went on to say of Markle's relationship with Prince Harry, "Along came Meghan, who obviously used some vivid bedroom promises to turn him into a warrior of woke. And now it seems she has her arms so far up his bottom, she can use her fingers to alter his facial expressions." Amazing. I don't think he should be receiving punishment for observations like that. In fact, he should be up for the Booker Prize. This is gold. And by the way, I've never met a bloke that wasn't controlled by his missus. That is the order of the universe. Last but not least, Jeremy writes, "Younger people, especially girls, think she's pretty cool. They think she was a prisoner of Buckingham Palace, forced to talk about nothing but embroidery and kittens." Fleet Street regulators Ipso, who have clearly had their sense of humour removed at birth, said this highlighted Markle's position as a female role model and was therefore sexist. Get over yourself. In the end, I wouldn't have used this kind of language in relation to Meghan Markle. As Jezza himself said, it was a little clumsy, it was a little harsh. But it got us talking, which is what Jeremy Clarkson is paid to do. Whether it's his un-PC jokes in his motoring programmes or his spicy books and newspaper columns, Clarkson has spent a career being naughty, and long may it continue. But sadly, there's very little room for that these days in this joyless, witless new world. Free speech is all but gone, and now columnists who are paid to have an opinion are punished if they do so. Free speech is not always pretty, it's not always comfortable, and sometimes it provides a platform for individuals you or I may find unpalatable. Well, that's a price worth paying, and it always has been. Keep motoring on, Jeremy. No U-turn required. Go full throttle. The fact that this article has offended as many people as it's entertained proves that, as always, Clarkson is top gear. He was joking. Your reaction, Mark, at gbnews.com. I'll get to your email shortly. Reacting to my take at 10, comedian Sajila Kershi, adventurer, leadership coach and speaker Adrian Hayes, and broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Lucy, let me start with you. Your reaction to the punishment meted out upon Jeremy Clarkson for his article about Meghan Markle last year.
I think it's far too harsh. I'm extremely worried about Ipso's recommendation, because my understanding was that actually if you were the person who was slighted in an article or something that was said by a journalist, then you could be the one that could go to Ipso and get redress. But what wasn't meant to happen was that there was a braying mob that would be able to apply to Ipso on behalf of someone else. So that's a fundamental rewriting of Ipso's rules. And that is a really worrying signal that actually free speech is no longer sacred in this country, that if you are a journalist, if you're a newspaper proprietor, if you're an editor of a magazine, that actually anybody could come after you and express dissatisfaction with something you've said or disapproval. Now, it just so happens that I thought that what Jeremy Clarkson said was disgraceful. I didn't get the Game of Thrones reference because I have never watched Game of Thrones, but that's irrelevant. The fact is, he's a columnist. He's paid to say things that are perhaps controversial, or sometimes to say things that other people are thinking. I disagree with what he said about Meghan Markle, and I thought the imagery was really upsetting. But he, in this country, has a right to say that, and Ipso has a right to protect him as much as the people that he writes about.
Well, definitely. Adrian Hayes, we're talking about Meghan Markle here, a multimillionaire, a very powerful person, one of the most famous people on the planet. It's a worrying situation if a newspaper columnist can't tear a famous celebrity a second arsehole.
Yeah, look, a friend of mine said to me many, many years ago, when you put yourself on a public stage, you're there to be shot down. And that comes with the territory. Mark, you get trolled, I get some abusive comments. It comes with the job. But look, Jeremy has upset the Indians, the Pakistanis, the Mexicans.
Argentinians.
It's part of his job.
Lib Dems.
Yeah, the lot. And we find it hilarious. He's boorish, he does it, and that's part of it, the way his appeal. But look, so I, like Lucy said, I fully disagree. But on a serious note, the greatest threats to our way of life to me, is not climate change, it's not Russia, it's not pandemics, it's the threat to free speech and freedom. And what's going on with deplatforming, cancelling culture and everything is a very, very sinister development in the West. And we really need to redress this balance.
Sajila, I'm not sure about the excrement, walking naked through the street. That's not language I would have used. Yeah. But apart from that, I thought the article was hilarious.
Well, it's funny because you read that out in your voice as a comedian, and yes, I laughed. But the point is, he's not a comedian, and I've got a really uncomfortable position on this because, like Adrian, or like most comedians, I'm really for free speech. I think that's really important. I come from a background where free speech isn't, and I really, really value that. However, what he wrote, yes, it was really harsh. I was under the impression that it was Meghan who was offended, and therefore I understood. But it was also 25,000 people complained, and he himself actually admitted that it was too harsh. He said, "Oh, my daughter's made me apologise." So there was some sort of reflection on his part. And if he had been more like, "No, I stand by what I said," I think it would be a different story. I think it's because he kind of felt that I've said this before, but I think Meghan and Harry, there is an unhealthy obsession with them, and in a very negative way. I don't know them. I don't really care either way about them. But when you see it like on a mass scale, on a daily basis, it is harsh to sort of like. But if 25,000 people complain, that's a lot of people saying, "Look, we don't think this is right." But Jeremy, you're not a comedian. Don't come over here taking our jobs. Do you know what I mean?
25,000 snowflakes, in my view. What do you think? Did Jeremy Clarkson go too far? He said that Meghan Markle was worse than the mass murderer Rose West. He was joking. I'm going to defend him all the way, but let me know what you think, especially if you don't agree. Mark at gbnews.com. Coming up at 10:30, we've got tomorrow's papers at 10:30 sharp with full pundit reaction. But next up, tonight's newsmaker is Kinsey Schofield, the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting. We will be remembering Princess Diana, who would have turned 62 today. Plus, can I tell you that Sky News' Kay Burley has attacked a GB News star? And I'll be dealing with her next.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back to the show. We've got the papers at 10:30 sharp. US news in just a moment. And Diana remembered on what would have been her 62nd birthday. Diana remembered in just a moment. Folks, Kay Burley, the breakfast TV presenter at Sky News, has had a bit of a dig at Nigel Farage. Now, Nigel Farage, GB News presenter, has had his bank accounts cancelled with no explanation whatsoever. Deeply concerning. Here's what Kay Burley had to say. Take a look at this tweet. She tweeted, "If 8 separate banks don't want your custom, I suppose you'd start to wonder why." What an insensitive thing to tweet. First of all, this is a guy that's, for no reason, he's not been informed why those accounts have been cancelled. Kay Burley doesn't have any empathy. She's not worried that she lives in a supposedly free country that would do that, based upon perhaps having the wrong political opinions. Plus, she's a journalist that doesn't want answers as to why it has happened. It's a shocking reaction and a disappointing low for television journalism. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not too worried about Sky News, because for the first time in the history of this programme, on a Friday night, we beat Sky News and BBC News for the entirety of the show by a significant margin. Why? Because of you, my viewers and listeners, who are so loyal, and we are building quite an army here on GB News and here on Mark Dolan tonight. So if you're enjoying the programme and if you're enjoying the channel, tell your friends and tell your family, and let's change the world together. Who needs Kay Burley and who needs Sky News? Now, folks, today would have been the 62nd birthday of Princess Diana. What a loss to the world. What a true princess she was. Mother, of course, to Harry and William. Let's remember her great legacy now in the company of tonight's newsmaker, the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, a sad day, but we should smile as we remember Diana.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. It's been over 25 years now. We still celebrate her for her fashion, her compassion. She's still such an important figure. I don't know that she knew at the time of her death that we would still be celebrating her life as fiercely as we do today.
No, indeed. So what was special about Diana? Because I know that you've been captivated by her since you were a little girl.
I mean, I just don't think that you typically, I would say around the same time, we saw Diana and Elizabeth Taylor really, they discovered how to take their celebrity and turn it into attention on something other than themselves. They wanted you to talk about the charities that they were involved with. They wanted you to talk about something bigger than themselves. And I would really credit Diana, I mean, on turning that obsession with her media-wise into something that was so much bigger than she was and more important than she was. And that's, she was involved in breast cancer research, so famous for her AIDS outreach, just the way she would quietly visit hospices in the middle of the night and sit with people that were alone as they died. You know, you just don't see people like that in the world. And I think that, you know, we just had that conversation about Meghan Markle. It's hard today to find celebrities or even royals that care more about people in need, others outside of themselves. And when you do see that, you are amazed by it. You cling to it. You want to be more like that person.
And Kinsey, these pictures remind us how stunningly beautiful she was, as well as empathetic. A complete one-off, star quality, the X Factor. And she would have been 62. So if she was with us today, she would be gorgeous, she would be radiant, and she would have so much to give.
Yes, I mean, I do think one of the reasons why she has become such, you know, a martyr figure for us is, aside from the fact that she really, truly did a lot of great work while she was here on Earth, she died in this angelic body and with this young face. I mean, she's forever young to us, similar to, you know, James Dean. But I do think, I've been talking about this a lot lately, I do think that she would be back in the UK. I do think she would have spent some time in America, because she was talking about that towards the end of her life. But the second Prince George was born, I feel like she would have been back there. She was would have been a very hands-on grandmother, and I think she would have been wanted to be around those babies. So I don't think America would have had her forever.
How do you think Megxit would have played out on Diana's watch? If Diana had been around, would Harry and Meghan still be here? Would they be married? What do you think her influence would have been?
I don't know if Meghan Markle would be around if Diana would have been here. I think that they might have butted heads. I think they might have clashed. I think that Harry would have married one of those beautiful young women that he was dating earlier in his life, because they would have had him, you know, think about Chelsea Davies. She might have had a mentor there that could have said, here's how we're going to play this. Here's how you play your cards right. Here's how I dealt with things. But, you know, the Catherine, the Princess of Wales, she had to navigate this stuff really on her own. She did an excellent job because she's got an incredible upbringing and a very strong family background. But I do think maybe he would have married one of the women he dated earlier because they would have had a mentor of sorts that could have helped them navigate that extreme attention.
Indeed so. Well, look, let's move on now to her sons, Harry and William, who have paid tribute but not mentioned each other. This would be torture for Diana.
Yeah, I think that they would be really disappointed by this. But Mark, I was honestly surprised to see it and, a little relieved to see that they both jumped in to participate in the Diana Awards video, knowing that the other was going to. I think it's a step forward. I know that I saw some negative press about it. I do think it's a step forward. Both men featured in the Diana Awards video. This is a cause that's extremely important to both of these young men. And right, they did not acknowledge each other. They didn't film it together, but they are, seemingly still working with each other, which I think is a good look.
Indeed. Can we talk now about the Supreme Court in the United States, which has ended affirmative action, which is essentially a push for diversity, giving you an advantage based on your skin color? What's the story?
Yeah, this is in schools. This is how colleges look through their applications and determine who they're going to accept into their schools. There are states that have done away with this before. California is one of those states. There is a pushback on this, Mark. There are protests currently happening and a lot of people that are very unhappy that, people of color wouldn't be rushed to the front of the line when it came to entrance, school entries. However, CBS, which is one of our largest media outlets, media corporations here in the United States, did a poll, and while their coverage has been very left-leaning and this is going back 1,000 years or 50 years, I'm being dramatic. But while their coverage has been very left-leaning and very disappointed in the decision, they did a poll that said 70% of Americans did not think it was necessary to judge a person based on their skin color when it came to college acceptance. So I think this is really perhaps America talking, saying, choose us because we're the best. Choose us because we make more sense to you, not because of what we look like.
That's right. Invoking the memory of the late, great Martin Luther King. Judge me on the content of my character, not the colour of my skin. Well, we judge you every week. We love you, Kinsey, and we'll see you next Saturday.
Thanks.
There we are. Next up, we've got the papers with full pundit reactions. Some great headlines coming in. See you in 2.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's time now for tomorrow's papers. Let's go. And we start with the Sunday Express, which is always a cracking read. They lead with the following. Rwanda scheme foiled by £1.5 billion of your money. Hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayers' cash has been handed to organisations fighting plans to remove asylum seekers to Rwanda. New analysis shows the government gave nearly £1.5 billion to groups opposing its own efforts to end the small boats crossings. It comes as ministers vowed to fight a Court of Appeal ruling that the Rwanda policy is unlawful. Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick said tonight, despite this judgment, our commitment to stop the boats is as strong as ever. Also, is that an upper crust George? Prince joins Dad Wills at Lord's. There you go, father and son enjoying the cricket and a bit of pizza. Also in the Express, PM Rishi Sunak, I experienced racism as a kid. It does hurt. Sunday Mirror, Jagger to wed again at 79. And Stephen Lawrence exclusive, suspect number 6 was there. A 6th suspect in the Stephen Lawrence murder was present, it's been claimed. Attack survivor Dwayne Brooks insists he could have identified Matthew White, but accuses police of sabotaging the probe. White, now dead, was named last week as a suspect. Dwayne said there's no doubt that is him. The Sunday Telegraph now. Pylons to be forced on public to hit net zero goal. Hundreds of miles of overhead cables and pylons are expected to be fast-tracked through the planning system despite local opposition so Britain can meet its environmental targets. The Department for Energy Security and Net Zero is drawing up sweeping planning reforms that industry leaders say are needed if the UK is to deliver on pledges such as eliminating fossil fuel generation by 2035. Macron deploys special forces to fight French rioters. And Tories on course for record defeat in Dorries by-election. The Conservatives are on course for the biggest by-election defeat in British history in mid-Bedfordshire, according to a poll. A survey by Opinium found that Labour would overturn Nadine Dorries's 25,000 majority in a seat that has been Conservative since 1931. The Independent, 1,300 arrests in one night as riots rip through French cities. And the LGBT plus Pride of London, huge crowds march through the capital in celebration. The Sunday Times now. Peers celebrated Russia Day at party with Putin's man in London. And 10,000 killed by asbestos in schools. Former pupils and teachers are dying after exposure to asbestos in classrooms decades ago, while children continue to be taught in schools full of the material. An estimated 10,000 pupils and staff have died as a result of exposure to the substance since the 80s. Among them was Chris Willis, a 34-year-old father of a baby son who contracted a disease related to the inhalation of asbestos, an incurable cancer after coming into contact with it as a teenager in Newcastle upon Tyne. He died last year. Also, violence in France after shot boy's burial. Last but not least, a Daily Star Sunday. Stingers desperate for a drink heading to Britain. Boozed up hornets on the rampage. Show me the way to go home. Hick, hick, say the Star. Threat to beer gardens and barbecues. Britain is facing an invasion of alcoholic Asian hornets, say boffins and boffinesses. The nasty critters' favourite tipples are beer and bubbly. Makes you want to go be total, say the Daily Star Sunday. Those are your front pages. With full pundit reaction now, let's hear the views of comedian Sajila Kershi, adventurer, leadership coach and speaker Adrian Hayes, and broadcaster, psychotherapist and writer Lucy Beresford. Now, folks, let's get through lots of these stories if we can at high speed. First of all, a shocking story there in the Sunday Express. Rwanda scheme foiled by £1.5 billion of your own money. Adrian.
We could talk about immigration for the next 6 hours. Let me give one point of this story, OK? The Express is kind of 1.5 billion of your money. Whenever I see this thing, I say, well, what about our money? 12 billion that goes to net zero, 10 billion on overseas aid, 100 billion plus on HS2. NHS
160 billion on the NHS?
You've got it's about 160, 400 billion on pandemic lockdowns. Look, this is small money, but I think they're slightly missing the point from a point. If they're trying to raise the R of the readership, I don't think they've got it. But the point I'm making is there's money. If we elect these politicians to solve the crisis, there is brains in our House of Commons to solve this with a fraction of money that we've plundered on all these other things.
But this is public pressure groups who are receiving money from the state to fight against government policy based upon a manifesto promise by an elected government.
And my point is, if the government really want to solve this, they could do it.
How?
We haven't got time. I leave Sajila and Lucy to go things.
Does it get military? You are a former military man.
There is many ways we could do it. And I say, if I start now, I'll never finish. But there are ways we could do this.
Ditch the European Convention on Human Rights?
That's one of them.
Right, OK. What do you think about this story, Sajila?
Oh, God, I'm getting so bored. I'm so bored of this.
We're working against ourselves, though, aren't we?
No, but the thing is, the Rwanda scheme was always destined to fail. It's like it's almost like a little carrot that the government dangled for all those who think it's an issue, and they think it's an issue because the government have created this issue, and the government don't want to fix it for whatever reason. I don't know why, but that money that you're thinking is going to cost a lot of money. I can't remember the figure, exact figure. Was it like 100,000 per person?
Yeah.
How does that make any sense? Why don't you use that money? Because if all these people are coming over, why don't you use the money for the people smugglers? Because nobody touches them. No one's doing anything about the smugglers. Why don't you fix the relationship with France?
You'll never get hold of the people smugglers, will you? Because they're just in cells around the world.
Oh, come on. You're not making any effort.
You can't go and knock on their door.
You're an army guy. You know that you can if you wanted to.
Where are they?
You can find bin Laden. You can find the smugglers.
You've got it. We stormed the beaches in the Second World War. Again, it goes back to my first point. If we really want to solve this, we could, but they don't want to. And there's the cowardice in the government that's not allowing it to happen.
Lucy, will the Rwanda scheme ever happen? Is it a smokescreen, as Sajila suggests?
I don't think it will ever happen. I think, unfortunately, legal processes will make sure that it doesn't. But, in fact, it is incredibly expensive and it seems too much money for a very limited number of migrants who would be sent back. But the problem is we've got a general election coming probably, in the next 18 months. Very few people are going to go into the polling booth and say, my electricity bills have tripled, my mortgage has doubled. But at least they've managed to reduce the number of boats that are coming across. I don't think, in polling terms, in terms of the electorate's preoccupation. It may very well be one of Rishi Sunak's 5 pledges, but that doesn't mean to say that that's what the electorate is going to be going into the voting booths and voting on.
Well, I think that Both issues are a concern to my viewers and listeners. I think they're worried about the cost of living, they're worried about mortgage rates, inflation, rent, having their job, the value of the pound in their pocket.
But I think
and they're worried about, and I think they're worried about illegal immigration too. I think both things are possible at the same time.
Can I just say, this illegal immigration thing is historically, politicians have done this through time. You look through history. When I first arrived in this country, it was the same story, illegal immigration. When my parents, you know, back in the day, when they first came over to the UK, you know, it was no dogs, no Irish, no blacks, right? Blah, 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 right? And, you know, it's the thing that politicians use to kind of garner support from the public. So I can't help thinking that this is just another way, like they're deliberately letting them in, they're deliberately creating this thing so that we can ignore all the terrible things that the government has done, this government, in its present tenure.
I really
do. Do you think this is a conspiracy, that it's deliberate by the government?
Look, there's illegal immigration, but there's legal immigration.
I think it's
We're collating everything.
I think it's a cock-up rather than a conspiracy.
Completely, yeah, because in fact legal migration has escalated. The numbers coming in from Europe have declined, but numbers coming in from other parts of the world, particularly India, have increased.
600,000.
And that's because a lot of people are complaining that there aren't enough nurses, there aren't enough doctors, there aren't enough architects. We want people, you know, a very high-quality immigrant coming in. But at the same time, you want to be able to say that you're doing something for certain communities where they do feel overwhelmed. I think we have to recognise that there are certain parts of the country that feel overwhelmed. This is going to address that, but they don't seem to have a plan.
Indeed. Look, we could, as you say, talk about it all day long. 10,000 killed by asbestos in schools. That's a real worry, isn't it, Sajila? This nasty substance is everywhere.
This asbestos, again, when I was at school, it was like we had the Bunsen burners and that was...
Correct.
But I didn't have that asbestos stuff.
I mean, can I be honest with you? I didn't even want to know what you were sniffing at school.
Yeah, glue was very Moorish back in those days.
But let me
it was the one that used to peel off on the table.
No, you turned out great. Whatever it was,
yeah, it was. We were just talking about rock stars, how they seem to be preserved by having illegal substances. Oh, perhaps I shouldn't have said that. I don't know which. We didn't mention any rock stars.
Don't worry, this is the home of free speech. Sue and be damned. I've just had a go at Kay Burley, so all bets are off now. But I mean, it's a devastating thing to think how much asbestos is still out there.
Yeah, that's
10,000 lives. This young father in his 30s dies from an asbestos-related illness because he breathed it in at school.
That is really scary because obviously then the whole generation who belongs to, you know, what 30 he was he?
Yeah, so he was in early 30s. Yeah, let's have a look.
You know, that's really, that's still really young.
Terrible.
And it's like, why has this not been resolved?
Why has it not?
Because the obsession with net zero and climate change, I think asbestos, pesticides, chemicals in foods, chemicals in drinks, water sewage, it goes on and on and on. All has been neglected on the great altar of climate change.
Can we get to a story that we want to discuss earlier, and it's about plastic surgery. So when you get a second, please, Marky, just grab that little story for me, because I thought it was very entertaining. The Brits getting a taste for Botox, OK? We're going to get to that in just a moment. A quick one. Oh, there it is. Let's have a look. Yes, indeed. With the love this story. With the demand for lip fillers and Botox on the rise, dentists in Britain are now offering cosmetic procedures, right? So you go in to have a molar sorted out and they get rid of your worry lines and your crow's feet. 7 of the biggest dental franchises are among the chains providing such services. So is it time for Brits to embrace plastic surgery? Lucy?
This is an extraordinary story. I mean, in order to embrace yourself, that's the highest goal, and to love the body that you're in. And unfortunately, what the dentists are saying is, well, once we fix someone's smile, then they start to notice all these other imperfections, and we've got the skills to be able to fix it. It's very like surgeons, you know, if you have a cesarean, apparently they also do a little bit of a tweak for women.
Is that right? I might ask for that. I might ask for that next time.
I think you should. It will change your life.
Can I just say, 2 kids, I still haven't got my figure back.
You've got it.
Oh, I don't know.
Great, babe.
Breastfeeding obviously worked for you.
No, listen, I haven't exhaled since we came on air.
I think this story is very interesting. Can I just jump in? Because there's a picture of Mick Jagger getting married, wedding at age 79 and things, because it reminds me when Mick Jagger was asked about his age and his physical conditions, the lines on his face, and he said that's laughter lines. The journalist asked and said nothing's that funny. Anyway, but I think, yeah, it's a great line. But look, on a serious note, I've got this thing on plastic surgery. Really, if we really want to keep young, look young, it's what we put in our mouths and things, the food we eat.
No, it's a mental attitude.
I fully agree, the mental attitude as well. But what our mental attitude and all the stuff we eat. So I think it's all, so many people doing plastic surgery, Botox, lip fillers, all the things, and just abusing what they put in.
Including, I've noticed young women that get plastic surgery.
You see, this is where I think it's like most women like at our age would have got surgery to look younger, but actually, young girls, you've got that youthful look. You look beautiful. You are gorgeous. The youth thing, you know, the elixir is what we're trying to see. You do not need Botox. However, can I just say that you're talking about dentists giving it? It's easier to make a Botox appointment. Not that I've had any, by the way, but I am like susceptible. So if they said, look, we can fix your grindy teeth and give you Botox at the same time, I'll be like, you're right then. You know, if it's a bargain.
But the trouble is the psychological dimension that is really scary, and it isn't actually just facial stuff. Teenage girls are having labia surgery because the boys have been watching porn and saying that doesn't look how I expect it to look, and we're actually damaging young people by giving them the idea that anything can be fixed, and if it can be fixed, then it should be fixed.
Well, young
really
girls
worrying.
are having their private parts.
Yeah, girls aged
changed.
15, 16 or 17 are having plastic surgery on their labia because the boys are saying that's not how I expect it to look.
What is the procedure?
Well, it kind of sometimes it can take the frilly bits away, or it just kind of tidies it up and it just makes it look kind of boring and regular. Whereas you want to embrace the body that you're born in, and over time you embrace the changes that it.
All mimsies matter. Can I just say, right? All mimsies matter. It doesn't matter what you look like down there. They're all important and unique. Yes, mimsies. Yes, I don't know what you can say with your off-cams.
Yes, exactly. That's why I was being so careful.
We've lost Adrian Hayes. He's just thinking about labias now, or labias.
Yeah.
Tell you what, Google it. Google it during the break and we'll find out what it actually means.
What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Listen, lots more from the papers next, including tomorrow's Mail on Sunday with an interesting headline. My pundits will be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros as well. Lots to get through. See you in 2.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here On GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, strong views in reaction to my pundit debate with the papers. And let me just bring a couple of emails on that. Susan says, "Hi, Mark. I cannot believe tonight's guests think that the issue of all these illegal immigrants arriving is not a major concern to the majority of the British taxpayers. I do think that maybe they need to take a trip north of Watford. Thousands of British workers are losing their job every time a hotel is commandeered to accommodate illegal immigrants. One hotel in Llanelli has just been taken over by the Home Office. 95 local people have overnight been sacked." Susan, for that, thank you. Also, dentists are doing Botox on people worried about their laughter lines. This from Terry. "Mark, is it too much to hope the dentists might start fixing the nation's teeth again?"
Yeah.
It is too much. Terry, thanks for that. Appreciate all your emails tonight, by the way, mark@gbnews.com. We've got the Mail on Sunday next, and let's see what they lead with. Woke Met ban badge tribute to fallen officers. Police officers have been banned from wearing a badge commemorating colleagues killed off in the line of duty in case it offends the LGBTQ+ community. Families of fallen officers tonight reacted angrily to the completely crazy order that Met officers should not wear the thin blue line emblem, a black and white Union flag with a thin horizontal blue line, if working at yesterday's Pride celebrations in London. Have we got time for that nonsense? No, we don't. Crazy stuff. It's time now for my pundits to reveal their front page heroes and back page baddies. And let's start with Sajila. Sajila, who's caught your eye today?
We're going with the hero or zero?
Let's go hero first.
OK, so my hero is Daniel de Simone, who's a journalist. I hadn't heard of him before, but he basically did the job of the Met Police in the Stephen Lawrence case. It's been 30-odd years now. Yeah. He researched and found the sixth suspect, Matthew White. The police failed the Lawrence family. The community failed the Lawrence family. The community lied and lied. There were members that knew what was happening, who it was, and maligned an innocent young man who died as a result of a race attack that day. And they, all these people have got blood in their hands. But basically, Stephen's mother, Baroness Doreen Lawrence, said it should not have taken a journalist to do the job that a huge, highly resourced institution should have done. And he gets my hero this week, as Daniel de Simone, because he spent a lot of time to get this story when the police should have done this.
Very important to recognise what was a diabolical and horrific miscarriage of justice. Let's have a look at your headline hero, Adrian.
Mine is someone who's been on the show quite a few times, which is Toby Young and the Free Speech Union. As I said earlier, I think the greatest threat to our way of life in the West is the curtailment of free speech, the deplatforming, the cancelling. It's taken on a new sinister turn. It's nothing new because it's been being done for years by the cancellation of Nigel Farage's bank accounts and the refusal to have bank accounts. But I was even more shocked by the Bishop of Lincoln or someone up north who was asked to give some feedback. He expressed concern about the Building Society nationwide, I think it was, who...
I think it was the Yorkshire Building Society.
Yorkshire Building Society, you got it, Yorkshire. He expressed concern about the trans message they're putting on their website, and he was cancelled. And I think Toby and the Free Speech Union, they're doing so much work that's unseen, and I think their work, where is this government? Where has this government been for the last 12 years of enshrining free speech in our society? It's a very important factor to me, and I think, as I said, very important for our society at large.
Absolutely, a worthy nomination. I'm a big fan of Toby Young's myself. How about you, Lucy, your headline hero?
His name is Finlay Andrew, and he was working as a steward at Lord's as a summer job, really, post-university. And he happened to be there on Wednesday when the Just Stop Oil protesters tried to cover the pitch with orange powder, and he rugby tackled one of them. And that's an amazing story in and of itself. Ben Stokes was photographed carrying another protester.
Johnny Bairstow.
And Johnny Bairstow as well. Because Ben Stokes is putting his arm out to stop another one. Anyway, Finlay Andrew has now created a LinkedIn post, almost like a CV, identifying all the different attributes that kind of helped him get that one moment, because there's a fantastic photo of him sort of rugby tackling. He's talking about how he throws himself into the job. He is always up for a challenge. He doesn't kind of say no to anything difficult. And this has just gone viral, and it's almost the perfect marketing for someone wanting to get a better job.
Fabulous nomination. So how about your back page zero?
OK, so this is going to be a really surprising one and an unexpected one, and will really shock my lefty friends. So I don't agree with Nigel Farage on his politics at all. I don't share his views. I do blame him for Brexit and the divisiveness that we had. However, I think it's absolutely appalling, and my zero is Coutts Bank and all the banks that refused to let him have a bank account and basically cancelled his bank. It's a really worrying precedent, and in terms of free speech, exactly that. But also the fact that whatever politics he's got or hasn't got, or anybody has, that should not be the basis of any business not doing, especially a bank, and making a non-person. And I did watch a clip of him where he got really upset and he said he might have to leave the country. I mean, some people say that he's been hoisted by his own petard, but I think I actually felt sorry for him, and that shouldn't happen to anyone. And it's really scary that it's not just him, and it attacked his family. Now, North Korea, they basically, if they accuse you of a crime, they take 3 members of your family, generational. Yeah. And how is that any different to them targeting his family, who've got nothing to do with what he decides to do in politics? Is one thing. His family is a separate issue. So it's a confusing one for someone who's a lefty who feels the way I do, but I don't think he should have been targeted in that way.
A lefty that believes in freedom of speech.
I do believe in freedom of speech.
Expression.
Yeah.
And the right to a bank account. Couple of seconds left, Adrian.
Oh, I want to say something else.
Go on, give me a quick line.
Quick one. ITV News is my back page zero. Now, two things. This is a story about Thames Water. When I see any story industrial, I want to hear from the management, I want to hear the unions, I want to hear the water specialists, things. I don't want to go into Jack and Diane's living room or kitchen to hear their things.
And of course, it wasn't even Jack and Diane.
Who was it? Diane, transgender woman. And the point I'm making, why there's zero, fair play to the woman herself, but this was a gender journalism, gender news, and just pushing a narrative, pushing agenda. That has got no place in a news bulletin.
Too right. In a word, your nominee and your reason.
Boots Chemist, they're closing 300 branches. What they could be doing is they could be actually providing a lifeline for the lonely, for the people who can't get blood pressure checks.
What's a good idea?
They could actually be at the forefront of a change in the way that health is delivered in this country.
Happy birthday to Sajila's son, Russ. Thank you for your company and my brilliant pundits. We're back tomorrow at 9. Headliners is next.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to
to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News.